Get ready for a wild one. We're diving into something I find fascinating. Silicon Valley, the land of tech, logic, algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
But get this. They're having a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
We're seeing meditation apps exploding in value, talking billions.
Yeah.
Astrology, that's pulling serious venture capital now.
Interesting.
Even CEOs are into mindfulness.
Wow.
Like alternative practices, all part of their routine. Ready to unpack this?
Let's do it. It's a total paradox.
It is. It's wild, right?
Yeah.
So first, let's talk scale.
Okay.
This isn't some fringe thing. We're talking major trends.
It's huge. Take Calm, for instance. You know, that meditation app.
Yeah, sure.
It's valued at a crazy $2 billion.
Seriously.
Yeah.
$2 billion. That's not just some trend. That's a statement.
It is. It's huge.
And it's not just apps.
Right.
What about the whole psychic services world?
Oh, that's booming too. In the U.S. alone, it's a $2.2 billion market. We're talking astrology, tarot, the whole thing.
Wow.
And it's not just your average person. Even the Financial Times is reporting on it. Business people, serious professionals, they're consulting astrologers, like for work advice.
The Financial Times. That's a pretty straight-laced publication. They don't usually mess with the mystical stuff. That's interesting.
It's a sign of the times.
For sure.
This isn't just a fringe thing anymore.
Right. So this is going mainstream.
Totally. And you see it inside Silicon Valley, too. The biggest companies, Google, Twitter, Salesforce, Meta, they're all incorporating mindfulness.
So it's not just a personal thing. It's part of their whole work culture now.
Yeah. Meditation spaces right in the office.
Yeah.
Wellness programs that include mindfulness training. And they're teaching emotional intelligence.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But what's the driving force here? Why are these tech giants, the ones known for data and logic, why are they suddenly into these ancient practices?
Right. It's a good question. Well, think back to Steve Jobs, his thing for Zen Buddhism. That was well known.
Yeah, totally.
His biographer, Walter Isaacson, he said Jobs believed Eastern spirituality wasn't just a personal thing. It was fundamental to his approach to business and to Apple's whole DNA.
I can see that. Apple products, they're known for simplicity and elegance. That's very Zen in a way.
Exactly. And this idea that ancient wisdom can be integrated into modern business, it's resonating with today's tech leaders.
I guess they're realizing there's more to success than just algorithms and code. Maybe these practices unlock something deeper, like creativity or intuition.
Maybe. And here's another example, the rise of astrotech. Have you heard of CoStar? It's an AI-powered astrology platform.
An astrology app.
Yeah.
Powered by AI. That sounds like science fiction.
Right. It's crazy. But CoStar, they're serious. They've been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times.
Wow. So they're legit.
Yeah. Their CEO talks about bringing astrology into the 21st century, making it more accessible, more relevant. They've raised $5.2 million in funding, so investors are on board.
So is this just Silicon Valley jumping on the latest trend? Or is there something deeper behind this shift toward these practices?
I think it's deeper. Dr. Gabrielle Temperley from the University of Cambridge, she's done research on this. She says these professionals, especially in high-pressure places like Silicon Valley, they're not turning to these practices just out of blind faith.
So there's a reason.
Yeah. They're looking for frameworks, ways to make decisions, especially with all the uncertainty and change, ways to handle stress, be more creative, and find a sense of purpose.
That makes sense. Silicon Valley is all about pushing boundaries. They need ways to handle that. It's still wild to see these practices, once considered fringe, embraced by the tech elite.
It's definitely a sign of the times, and it ties into a larger thing, the wellness revolution. Companies are realizing employee well-being goes beyond just physical health.
Yeah.
It's mental, emotional, even spiritual.
So they're recognizing that happy employees are more productive and more innovative. Maybe this isn't a fad. Maybe it's a fundamental shift in how we approach work and life in this digital age.
Possibly. And it's not just talk. There are real changes. McKinsey & Company did a report called The Wellness Revolution.
Okay.
They found corporate wellness programs are evolving. They include all these mental, spiritual, and emotional things we've been talking about.
So it's not just gym memberships and free snacks anymore.
Nope. It's deeper. Companies are investing in mindfulness programs, creating meditation spaces, and offering workshops that go beyond the traditional stuff.
And it's working.
Well, research from Harvard Business Review suggests it is. They found that the global corporate wellness market is expected to reach like $93.4 billion by 2028.
Wow, that's huge.
And 80% of large companies already offer some kind of wellness program.
That's incredible. So corporate wellness with mindfulness and meditation, It's becoming a force in the business world.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how Silicon Valley, a place so associated with logic and reason,
Hmm.
is embracing these more holistic and alternative approaches.
Right.
But it's not always out in the open. Remember that Financial Times article? It talked about business professionals turning to astrologers and psychics, but they keep it quiet.
Still a bit of a stigma, I guess, even in Silicon Valley.
I think so. But the fact that it's happening at all, publicly or privately, shows a deeper shift. People are looking for new ways to make sense of the world, to deal with stress and uncertainty, and to find meaning and purpose.
And that desire for guidance and meaning, it's not just Silicon Valley CEOs, it's something a lot of people are dealing with. So if you're curious about exploring these practices, maybe even dipping your toes into psychic consultations or astrology, there are actually good platforms out there.
Yes, absolutely. Websites like top10psychics.com are a good place to start. They have reviews of different platforms like Mystic Sense, Purple Garden, Keen.com, California Psychics, and others.
And those offer everything from tarot readings and astrology charts to psychic consultations. It's amazing how technology has made these practices so accessible.
It really is. Ancient wisdom meets modern tech. It's creating new possibilities.
So is this a genuine shift towards a more holistic approach to work and life? Or just another Silicon Valley trend that will fade away?
Tough to say for sure. But the lines between ancient wisdom and modern technology, they are definitely blurring.
It's fascinating. Okay, we've covered a lot, from meditation apps to psychic consultations to this whole new world of corporate wellness. But this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore.
It's fascinating to see how these companies are actually putting these principles into practice, moving beyond just the ideas and into action.
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about mindfulness, but it's another to see it like really woven into the fabric of a company's culture. So let's get specific. How are these practices actually being implemented in the workplace?
Well, take Google, for example. They have this program called Search Inside Yourself.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It actually started as an employee training course, but it became so popular that it's now taught globally.
Wow, a global program from Google teaching mindfulness and emotional intelligence. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they've really recognized that these practices are valuable not just for personal well-being, but for team dynamics, creativity, and even leadership.
So it's not just about sitting on a cushion and meditating.
No, it's about giving employees practical tools to handle the complexities of work and life.
Right, so real-world applications.
Exactly. And other companies are focusing on creating supportive environments.
Okay.
Like Twitter, for example, they have dedicated meditation spaces in their offices.
Oh, wow, built right in.
Yeah, they recognize that employees need quiet spaces to disconnect and recharge. And Salesforce has gone a step further, incorporating mindfulness zones into their buildings and providing access to mindfulness apps.
It sounds like they're designing the workplace to encourage these practices, like mindfulness is built into the architecture itself.
That's a great way to put it. And even Meta, formerly Facebook, has embraced meditation and wellness programs for their employees.
So it seems like these tech giants are recognizing that a mentally and emotionally balanced workforce is a more productive and innovative workforce.
Absolutely.
It makes sense when you're constantly bombarded with information and deadlines. Burnout is a real risk, and these practices offer a way to step back, gain perspective, and ultimately perform better.
And there's growing evidence that these practices can reduce stress, improve focus, and even boost creativity.
Yeah, it seems like a win-win for both employees and the company. But let's be realistic. Integrating these practices into a fast-paced, results-driven environment like Silicon Valley can't be easy.
Of course, there are challenges.
Like what?
Well, one is skepticism. Some people might see these practices as fluffy or new agey, not suitable for a serious business setting.
Right, they're thinking meditation, shouldn't we be focusing on data and code?
Exactly. Overcoming that skepticism can be tough. Another challenge is simply finding the time.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Silicon Valley is notorious for its long hours, and demanding culture, carving out time for mindfulness practices can be difficult.
Right, there's that classic time is money mentality.
Yeah, but maybe the thinking needs to shift. Maybe investing time in these practices actually saves time in the long run by improving focus and productivity.
Right, it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And some companies are starting to see the value in that, realizing that a burnt-out employee is ultimately less productive than one who takes time to recharge and maintain their well-being.
So it's about finding a balance, but how do companies measure the effectiveness of these programs? How do they know if their investment in mindfulness is actually paying off?
That's a great question, and it's something researchers are still exploring. There are some promising metrics like employee satisfaction surveys, stress level assessments, and tracking productivity, but it's a relatively new field. More research is needed to establish clear benchmarks.
So it sounds like we're just beginning to understand the full potential of these practices in the workplace. But the fact that so many companies are willing to experiment and invest speaks volumes. They must be seeing something valuable here.
Definitely. And it's not just about the bottom line. It's also about fostering a more humane and sustainable work environment where people feel supported, valued, and empowered to bring their whole selves to work.
Yeah, that's a powerful concept. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they consider mindfulness and alternative practices in their own work lives?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that this is a trend worth paying attention to, whether you're a CEO, a manager, or an individual contributor. These practices have the potential to transform the way we work and live.
It's about being open to new possibilities, experimenting with different approaches, and finding what works best for you.
Exactly. It's recognizing that well-being isn't a luxury. It's essential for success in today's fast-paced world, and maybe, just maybe, it's about rediscovering ancient wisdom that's been there all along.
That's a great point. So these practices can be valuable for navigating the complexities of life, whether you're a seasoned CEO or just starting your career.
Absolutely. And while we've focused on the corporate world in this deep dive, it's important to remember that these practices have value far beyond the office. They can be applied to any area of life where you're looking for greater balance, focus, and well-being.
That's a good point. And if you're curious to learn more about specific practices or resources, don't forget the websites we mentioned earlier, like top10psychics.com.
Right. They offer a wealth of information on everything from meditation and mindfulness to psychic consultations and astrology.
Don't be afraid to explore. You might be surprised at what you discover.
Well said.
Okay, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. So we've explored how Silicon Valley is embracing, ancient wisdom and alternative practices. But now let's zoom out. What are the bigger implications of all this?
Yeah, it is a fascinating thing, isn't it? This whole merging of technology and ancient wisdom, it makes you think about, what does it all mean for work, for finding meaning, for well-being in general?
Right. I mean, we've talked about the practical side, how these practices are used in companies and what the benefits might be. But what's the deeper meaning here? Is this just a fad? Or is it something more like a real shift in values?
I think it's deeper than a fad. I think it shows this yearning for meaning and purpose, especially in a world that's so dominated by technology and constant change.
So it's like people are looking for something beyond the latest gadget or the next big app.
Exactly. They want something that makes them feel grounded, something that brings stability and connection in a world that can feel pretty chaotic and disconnected. And these practices, with their focus on mindfulness, self-awareness, and connection, they seem to offer that.
Yeah, it's like they offer a way to navigate this crazy, complex world, to make sense of all the information and stimulation that's constantly coming at us.
Yeah.
It's almost like a counterbalance to that super rational, data-driven world of Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not about rejecting technology or logic. It's about finding a more holistic approach, one that combines the rational and the intuitive, the scientific and the spiritual.
So it's not an either-or thing. It's about finding a way to have both.
Exactly. And this has big implications for the future of work. As we move toward a more automated, tech-driven economy, the skills that will be most valuable are the ones machines can't easily replicate.
Like creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and the ability to connect with people on a human level. The stuff that makes us human.
Right. And those are the very skills that are developed through many of these alternative practices. So in a sense, this trend is preparing us for the future by helping us hone those uniquely human qualities that will be in high demand.
So it's not just about personal well-being. It's about getting ready for the future job market. Interesting.
And it's about redefining what success really means. For so long, success has been all about material wealth and achievements. That classic Silicon Valley thing, move fast and break things.
Yeah. But this trend seems to say that people are questioning that definition of success.
Right. They're realizing that true well-being comes from a sense of purpose, connection, and fulfillment. It's about shifting priorities, moving away from a purely materialist mindset towards something more meaningful and sustainable.
It's like we're at a crossroads. And we have a choice to make about what kind of future we want to create.
Exactly. A more humane and fulfilling future. And I think this trend, with its emphasis on mindfulness, compassion, and connection, offers a way forward. It's not just about Silicon Valley. It's about all of us redefining what it means to be human in this rapidly changing world.
Well said. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
I'd say don't underestimate the power of exploring these practices, whether it's meditation, astrology, psychic readings, or something else entirely. There's a lot of wisdom and insight to be gained from these alternative approaches. You might discover a whole new way of seeing the world and your place in it.
I love that. And if you're feeling inspired to dive deeper, remember those platforms we mentioned like top10psychics.com? They have tons of resources and guidance on all sorts of practices, including psychic consultations. Who knows, you might even connect with a psychic advisor who can offer some personalized insights. It's all about exploring what resonates with you and finding what works best for your journey.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey. Keep those minds open and keep exploring. That's it for today.